think.
You're thinking March, you're thinking green.
It was so
Spring.
nice today,
I know,
right?
it's 40 out.
I know,
I think it's
good.
good.
It's like so great.
Beautiful.
Good morning, it's 9:01 and we're gonna get started. It's
Didn't make it.
February 7th, 2023, our 9 a.m. working session. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissions are present. We've got 4 in the conference room and Commissioner Jordan is zooming in today. Thank you. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. So James Moore, Scott Chesney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've got a few slides for you today. This is a summary of building and planning activity from 2022 and some comparative statistics over kind of a 5-year period on the basics of what we do. Next slide, please. You'll recall we have 4 primary functions in building and planning. Long-range and comprehensive planning, which is the long look at where the county is growing over generally 20-year plus horizons. This also involves the Planning Commission and the Steering Committee of Elected Officials as it talks about our growth areas and where we're headed to provide that direction. Land use development, which is the platting side of our world, which is that next step of taking those plans and reducing them to lots, buildable lots. In this case, this involves our work, and then the hearing examiner holds public hearings to adjudicate these processes. Building permits, James' side of the house, which is down to the real guts of getting things constructed and occupied and getting people to invest in the county. And then code compliance, which is following up on all of those things, both on the building code and the zoning codes, to protect, for the most part, it's directed to protect what's already in place. So we work from the very large scale down to protecting and preserving investments that have already been made in the county. Next slide, please. Actually, go 2, if you don't mind. The guts of what we do are in land use side, is in the platting side, and preliminary plats are probably the biggest part of what you see here. You can see they have held more or less steady with the pre-COVID years of 2018, 2019, both for 21 and 22. What's good about that is we're also increasing the number of lots that are coming up, not just the plats themselves. So about a 7% change in submittals, and then in over a 5-year period, a better than 160% increase in lots platted themselves. Next slide, please. And just in terms of one thing that's always interesting to our customers, these plats typically are in our world for about 60 days of time within our office. We're holding to that. We said last year we were shooting for a 90-day window. We've been able to generally stay within that. The overall time from application to the public hearing generally runs somewhere in the 5 to 7 month process, with the biggest part of that being the things that go back to the applicant for their own corrections and revisions, and then getting that scheduled for the hearing examiner itself, which is usually about a 30-day window. So we're in that same time frame. So on final plats, which are the last recorded effort before building permits are issued, you can see in some cases they're down from previous years. But interestingly, even though there were fewer final plats approved in 22, there were more lots approved. So we still see this as a good, or I'd say an optimistic view of our market, that developers are planning for growth even in challenging financial times, and those lots are coming into place. Next slide, please. Preliminary short plats, generally, well, they're smaller, generally 10 lots or under, or 4 and under outside of our urban growth areas. These are also growing in some ways and holding steady in others. The number of lots you can see considerably fewer than the larger plats, but also growing and growing from the 5-year horizon up about 30% overall, and about 17% from 1 year to the next. Next slide. And then final short plats. You can see here there's been a pretty a nice growth curve from the COVID era of 19 and 20. The plats are coming back. The lots are coming out and staying about the same. So we're still, I guess the best thing here is we're seeing the more or less constant or at least steady growth. No major drop off from the economy at this point. One more slide, please, or next slide, please. These last two on the planning side reflect other things that happen. One is called the certificate of exemption, and this is an exemption from the subdivision rules, part of the RCWs. It's a statewide issuance. And this chart shows that has held pretty steady over time. What is not in here is a C of E can create 2 lots or it can create dozens of lots. It's a simple process by which a piece of land is carved into 10-acre parcels outside of our normal subdivision process, depending on the number of lots and road access into that. It's a change. It's almost an unregulated part of land division because it does not require a subdivision, which means it doesn't require a public hearing. It doesn't require much analysis. It's allowed to do that. Where this happens for the most part is in the ring of zoned lands, rural, traditional, urban reserve, outside of the urban growth areas that are not allowed to plat. So they're being carved up into smaller pieces using this exemption. And you can see they're holding steady over time. It's a very popular tool. Next slide, please. And then one that's happened a lot, kind of one of the bridges between planning and building. You can see accessory dwelling units, or those smaller units, granny flats, things they were called in the past, have grown again in the last couple of years. It's becoming a more popular choice for those who want to add a residential unit to either rent to someone or in some cases still with family. One more, please, Ron. And then last, we decided to put up something to show where the comprehensive plan amendments were. We didn't put this information up last year, but we thought it would be useful to see that the number of comp plan amendments is relatively steady, but has been higher. And by comparison, there are 14 that were submitted for the 23 cycle. But importantly I think for our observation is the number of acres that are now created for residential use. And this includes mixed use, but also conversions from lower to higher density residential and from light industrial to residential uses. So you can see over the past few years, there's been 300 or so acres that have come sort of, I guess we would say, on the market for residential development through the comp plan amendment process. We will be looking at that again this year. You will be seeing some of those in the next couple of months for this year's cycle. And then, of course, this provides the basis for what we're doing to update the entire comprehensive plan into 26. So that's a snapshot on the planning side. I will turn it over to James for building permits.
Next slide. So building permits, kind of how we've always looked at it, is the 90 days and shorter. So if we look here, 2017, we're in the 6,000 range, and then it slowly creeps up to the 9,000 range for submitted. On the issued side, in 22, we stayed at the 7,000 range, 7,800. It's showing an increase, and it's still, the one thing that I want to point out is that the increase happened even after the code change that happened when we had the big push. So we have another code change coming in 21. We have the 21 code coming this July 1st. So we're expecting another large influx of plans due to the requirements of the energy code.
And when was the other major one? Was it 21? Was that the other major
It was.
code change?
It
last
was.
year.
Yep.
Was it 22 or 21?
It was
21.
21.
21.
Yeah, the 18 code was adopted in 21. So as you can see, the commercial side, and it's just the flow of how it works. The commercial side, next slide, please. As you can see, the commercial side is slightly going downward, but the residential side is maintaining. So the way I've always seen the influx is the commercial will die off, then you'll have schools come in, then you'll have houses come in. And so that's the rotation. And so right now, the commercial's dying as far as new permits, but then it's picking up in other areas. We can see that 21 residential, these are issued permits, stayed above the 800 from 21 to 22. I don't foresee with the plats coming on board that this is going to slow down. I don't believe that the interest rates or the other trends are going to stop it. Yes, sir.
So have you guys taken a look at what the pattern is for Post Falls or Kootenai County? Because I hear from the industry a lot that we're experiencing a pretty good leakage because of the new code requirements. And then I hear from WashDOT, commuter traffic across the state line has increased by 25%. So I just want to make sure if we've got numbers that help support that argument, that's great. If there are numbers that don't support that argument, then I got to find some other rationale for what that dynamic is.
I can tell you Post Falls, Rathdrum, Athol, those areas are exploding.
Exploding.
Yeah, they widened the road going from Coeur d'Alene up into Hayden. There's a back road up there that was a 2-lane, now it's a 4-lane highway. With flyovers, and it's exploding. And I believe it's because of code. I believe it's because of availability pricing.
Well, I know the governor last month announced a $1 billion allocation to expand I-90 from Coeur d'Alene to the state line. And it's basically to try and accommodate that commuter traffic that's coming across the state line and stuff. So the challenge will be they'll hit the state line and then it narrows down to 4 lanes again.
I would also look at Trent.
Yeah.
Because of where the
Back
access.
door.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would also look at Trent.
Okay. Good point. Okay.
So the 22 permitting trends, next slide, please. You'll see oh, I jumped ahead. No, you're good, Ron. You're good. Nope, go back. Sorry. So again, the residential from 22 to 21 to 22 down 15%. The commercial 108% up. And then accessory structures down 17%. The accessory structures was probably because of interest rates. Interest rates were a little bit up, people getting nervous. They don't want to take out, a loan against their house to build the garage. And that's where those come from. But the commercial side, we're up 108%. So that's gonna bring in the jobs that will bring in the houses. And then we'll go to the next slide. This one shows our average times. We finally got 95% of these reports down to process. So these times are fairly accurate. And what I mean by that is that this is average days in process. What this is tracking is us getting it to the door, waiting for the contractor to pick it up. What we did not implement before was putting a stop clock on it. As soon as it's ready to issue, it's no longer our responsibility. It's on the contractor. And so some of them will let them sit for 6 months before they pick it up because they're getting a draw off of another to bring in the money to pull these. So the homes and the accessory structures, again, once we implement this, you're going to see that drop dramatically because my time frame is 21 days. You're going to have a correction letter or you're going to have an approval from every department. That's what I'm pushing for. That's on commercial. On residential, I want 7 days. And so when someone submits, when they have a completed application, it gets submitted and it gets routed. Now, what we've done is on the front side, we've stopped it from being incomplete applications. So that way the person behind you who has a complete application actually gets to be served, where when you're submitting blank pages, it's like, no, wait a minute. We need a complete application. We're just spinning our wheels. And so what we've done is on the front side, if you don't have a complete application, it's not submitted. Once you have a complete application, it gets submitted, gets routed. Within 7 days on residential, you're going to either have a letter saying what's wrong with it, or you're going to have an approval from every agency that touches it. So these numbers reflect them sitting. So what happens is we get it ready to issue and it sits. And then we wait for the contractor to come in and pick it up.
So with the new legislation that's being proposed and stuff, that becomes critical in terms of identifying the timeline, because there are now a couple bills that are actually introducing penalties if you don't meet timelines and stuff. So, that stop, start monitoring will count when you calculate days to satisfy the permitting requirements.
Yeah, the one I believe is that 45 business days or 90 calendar days.
Yep.
That's the one I've been watching the closest. So that's why I'm trying to ensure that we are hitting these stop clocks, the chess clock, saying, no, we're done. The penalty's not on us.
And so for the benefit of my fellow commissioners, we are, in probably the top 10% of counties across the state in terms of our permitting process. A lot of the energy driving the legislation is the other side of the state, where they will literally take months to do what we do in a week, kind of a deal. And that's but the problem is that now they're talking about penalties, and so we could be wrapped into that dynamic because of what's happening on the other side of the state.
Definitely, I've heard of reports to get a house, it takes a year.
Yeah.
And that's nothing special, that's a house.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that it is a 1,200 square foot home on a 10,000 square foot lot.
Yeah.
And so that's what our department should never get to that point.
Yeah.
And that's the process that we're just trying to create the numbers by our process to show that we'll never have an issue with that 45-day mark. Because I can tell you, there's not enough pushback on it. So it will go into legislation.
Yeah, bills will pass.
Any questions?
Appreciate the information.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Hey, Captain, you showed up just in time.
Been out there for a little bit.
It's hanging, working about.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you for
morning.
being here.
That's good to be here. Good to see you all.
Go ahead. I'll let you go ahead and start.
Okay, we are proposing, asking for signatures from the commission for the board in regard to an ILA. This is a renewal of an expired ILA with the city of Spokane Valley for GIS services that we provide. These are services we've been providing to them since about 2004. This will be our third agreement with them. This agreement is a little different. If we turn to page 2, second page of this. This agreement is a little different in that we actually took out a lot of components from the last agreement. We only have one agreement or one component left, and that involves just providing GIS services. We used to provide access to them to multiple applications and to other services besides just GIS information. What this agreement does is just specifically rule out what is expiring. One of the elements is expiring at the end of this month, and we will pull the plug on that. And then the other services were not even included in this portion of this new ILA. We've allowed for, I wrote up the details of what the ILA needed to be. Casey Evans, is he here, Casey? He and the attorneys over at the city of Spokane Valley worked through the details and wrote up the legal portions of the contract. We were in agreement, Casey and I were, with the terms, everything that was worked through. We got signatures from the city of Spokane Valley, and if you're following on the On the PowerPoint above, the slide above, the last two items under completed tasks are identical. They're just written differently. My apologies for having that in there twice. So we're at this point of remaining tasks, of briefing the board of this ILA, and then also hopefully next week receiving signatures and your approval. Budget impact on this is positive. We simply provide the services requested and we bill out our time for those services to the tune of about, on average, I looked over the last 18 months, just for these particular services, typically between $500 and $1,500 a month is what we bill out at the end of each month for services provided specifically to GIS. Those services mainly include helping the city of Spokane get appropriately designed the addressing that needs to happen within our GIS systems. And that includes passing data along to SHREC for 911 purposes, and also ensuring that the addresses meet I can't think of the right term, the agreement, the charter for address standards, the addressing standards that every agency except for the city of Spokane Valley signed a couple of years ago. So SHREC really requires that to be met, and we assist SHREC with that, and we bill the city of Spokane for that work, city of Spokane Valley for that work that we do. That's essentially what this is for. You can read through the, you probably have read through the contract. Are there any questions with this last bullet point? Last page.
So I have not read through the contract, so you were saying earlier though, that in the past, we were doing additional services that we're no longer doing for them. And so we're only doing the GIS addressing.
Yes.
So what were the additional services we were doing? in the
We
past?
provided access to a storm bill application for them to manage their stormwater billing. They manage the application. They manage the application portion of it, the database, and the technical services aspects. We're here at the county. We've given them 2 years to create their own system. They weren't quite finished by this summer. They weren't really ready to bill out at the end of this year on their new system. So we allowed them to continue to use the system that is on our servers here through the month of February. At the end of this month, we'll terminate that service as well. That was the last remaining service we had. Prior to that, we had in place that we had actually stopped billing for because we stopped providing the service in years past for links to other applications like Web Paddle, Pub Paddle, things that Scout eventually replaced. So there's been a lot of services we used to provide. In fact, we had a contract programmer that IT managed that was full on, worked and supported that worked out there and supported them with all their GIS needs. And we brought that all back in-house now.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not seeing any. There we go.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Okay, I think Chief Ellis is up next. So Todd, you're with him?
Yes. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So we're here to give you a financial update with regard to the Small Arms Range and Training Center in the West Plains. Bruce would have normally been here today, but he's got a family matter that prevents him from being here. So I am working off of some of his notes, and I will do the best I can to represent his thoughts and justification in it. But essentially, from the time we started this project, and you may recall that that was at a time when construction costs were varying widely. And so they were at one point, they escalated dramatically. They came back down when we went to bid. There are a few items, though, that came up after the start of the construction that have driven the cost of this project a little bit higher than anticipated. We put aside a 5% contingency for this project. And what Bruce informs us is that we have essentially hit the limit of that 5%. But there are a few items that drove those escalations, and there are a couple of items left to acquire for this project to bring it to fruition.
Can I interrupt for just a second? I've reviewed your briefing points, and there seems to be some issues with regard to claims regarding the design. And I just asked that we potentially reserve the issues on potential design defects claims to executive session, as it may result in litigation.
Thank you.
Is that all right?
Thank you. Yes. So I just wanted to highlight some of the big ones that have driven the cost on this project. The biggest one is the boundaries of the parcel that were originally assumed for this project. Once we got into it, we recognized were wrong after the design was placed on the parcel map boundaries. So for example, what we found was that there was a rather wide right-of-way swath along the highway abutting portion of the parcel that was not part of the county parcel, that was incorporated as part of the county parcel. So that required us to redesign, move all of the main utilities back. Some of those need to be relocated. All the sidewalks, all the parking lots, all of that was essentially a redesign once we realized that the parcel map that was in our records was not accurate, did not accurately reflect the right-of-way easement that went through there. So that was the largest one, nearly $1 million in redesign and adjustments and infrastructure on those. The other items that we took a look at was, this was always a design that anticipated the potential for future expansion. When we started making inquiries about that, infrastructure had already been installed in the area of the future expansion footprint. So that was not going to make sense. So prior to the construction of the building, we went ahead and had that infrastructure moved out, kind of a clear zone for future expansion. That was about $270,000. The original design in the checkbox said gas is available, natural gas is available for this project. It was never asterisked though that it was nearly a mile away. For those who have had experience working on projects in the West Plains, they know that that is a very risky endeavor about going through potential rock and stuff like that to get there. But gas line was nearly a mile away, and so there was more cost to extending that line to the site. There was also in initial conversations with the Department of Transportation, the assumption is that we could dig through the Medical Lake Highway. That was, I don't know that it was rescinded, but that option was eliminated by WSDOT, and instead we were required to bore underneath the road. And in boring under that road, we hit rock. So we had to go to a different type of boring method that obviously it always costs more. And so those are some of the items that have driven the cost of this project. There are some other things that that I think that we looked at. So for example, the original design called for hydro seeding, grass seeding, the site in the area around the building. The architectural depictions show grass around the buildings, but there was no irrigation system incorporated. And I think sometimes the thought is, well, you live in Washington, doesn't it rain all the time? It's like, you live in Eastern Washington. So part of what we're looking at is some of those added costs with regard to irrigation, the added cost of bringing the gas from as far away. So at this point, we believe that we are about $375,000 shy of hitting projects that we need to incorporate in this project. And I think part of the question is time, why now? Why not wait for another few months? And I think the issue is we're at a point now where they need to be incorporated into the construction at this point. Otherwise, it's more expensive to go back after the fact, and do a change order after you've got more infrastructure installed. So that's where we're at. Chief Ellis, I don't know if you have more to add, but we're more than happy to answer questions. Like I say, Bruce has been most intimately involved in this project and could probably speak to some more of the details. but I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
Sorry, I'm not really familiar with the project. Is there an overview of what the original estimated cost was, who the project design and construction team was, the process of going out to bid? Maybe we'll talk about this more if we need to in exec session, but do you have like an overview?
I can get one to you.
Yeah.
I mean, in a nutshell, this was identified with regard to, we entered into negotiations years ago, 15 years ago, with the Air Force about potential joint projects where both of us would have a common need. What was identified was in the area of training, specifically small arms range. Their range is basically no longer meets code, I guess would be the easiest way to say it, and would require significant cleanup if they were going to use that site to rebuild. So they were looking to partner with another organization where they would pay a substantial part of the capital costs. And so the concept of this is really a joint training facility. Under the umbrella of the facility, there are two parts to it. One is the indoor small arms range, where we are in partnership with the Air Force. We have a contract. It is the first contract of its kind in the nation, an intergovernmental services agreement, to partner with them where they use operating funds to help pay for the capital component of the project. So on that half of this project, they are paying 80% of the construction costs. Our contract is to have this ready to go September 1 for move-in and operational by October 1 of this year. The other half of the project, if you will, of the umbrella is the regional law enforcement training facility that has a number of components to it that Chief Ellis is well versed in and can answer any questions. But essentially, it is a regional law enforcement training facility that partners with the Air Force, where the Air Force is paying a significant portion of the capital. That
Yeah,
otherwise, I
it'd be
think,
great to see those numbers.
yes, I can get you that overview.
So the 375 that you're talking about is what the county overage is, not.
Correct.
That wouldn't be, we wouldn't be helped out by the Air Force.
Correct.
Would they not be part of paying for that too?
The way that contract worked was it locked in under the IGSA for the first 10 years. And so if we have something that could not have reasonably been anticipated, for the example, is you've got to do a cultural inventory assessment. And if they would have found an Indian, a Native American burial ground there that needed to be mitigated, that would have been an unanticipated cost. We could have gone back to the table with the Air Force and renegotiated to share those costs. If it's things that should normally have been anticipated, i.e. the extension of a gas line, those things, they are pretty much locked in for the first 10 years. We have a reopener at that 10-year to go back and reassess all of our operational costs and determine how their cost sharing should be adjusted to make sure that they are paying their fair share.
But that 10-year relook does not provide you an avenue to go and recapture construction cost.
You're correct.
That's purely operational cost.
You're correct. And I should say
But
that
some of the funding pays back our capital cost, is what you're saying though, over the 10 years.
yeah, when they make their monthly payment,
That we are using
there
that
is
to
an
pay-
operational
to pay down the
component
debt
and a
to
capital
build
component.
this facility.
Correct. And we own the facility outright from day one. It is a county facility.
So, so first, the comment here was that, bearing that all in mind, that the contingency was substantially lower than proposed. So what happened there? Because it should have been, in my mind, a proper contingency proposal, so that way it was part of the original agreement with the Air Force.
Right.
That would happen.
We originally proposed a contingency in the 8 to 10% category, and we're directed to reduce that down to 5%. And so,
So is it 10% kind of a standard?
yes, that 8 to 10% is kind of standard. And I think I'll just I know Commissioner French had a lot of experience in the West Plains and in construction. I used to be in the excavation business, did a lot of work in the West Plains. And I would say that my contingency was always higher in the West Plains, mostly because of rock, lots of rock. And you never knew how deep or shallow it was going to be. So yes, this was originally projected to be an 8 to 10% contingency. We rolled it back to 5%. And we have spent that 5% at this point based on Bruce's tracking of expenditures.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so is that September 1 date driving? Is the Air Force expecting everything in that indoor range to be ready to go September 1?
Operational October 1.
Right,
We want the building completed to a point, certainly the half that's the small arms range, so they can start moving in on September 1. So they've got 30 days to get set up, get organized, so they can go live with their training program October 1. So yeah, we've always aimed for a completion of the last day of August, and then 30 days of basic transition, be operational on at least the firing arms small arms range side on October 1. Hopefully the training side is done at the same time as well. But if we have, I guess, any hiccups that happen, we'd rather have that happen on the training side. We have a little more flexibility of our start date on the training side than we do on the small arms range side.
is there an opportunity to, who's all using the training facility? Could there be more folks that use it and contribute maybe to the cost that we could?
Are you talking about purely the training side, or are you talking about the small arms side? Or the umbrella, the bigger?
I don't know, you described it as a regional training facility. Not the range side, the indoor range, I guess. Is that, I don't know,
So
I'm trying to understand, but I think a briefing paper would just help me.
Right. Why don't I set up a meeting with you and come by and
Well, the sheriff did talk about the project with me, but
Yeah.
having some actual numbers would be great.
The training side is the sheriff's department, so that is, and it's up to the sheriff's department to figure out how, if they're gonna, regional, because the city of Spokane Valley will be using it as well since they're contracted with the sheriff's department. So, at this point in time, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's not,
Right now, it's just the sheriff's training,
it's just.
sheriff's department.
yes.
So
But it has the potential, it looks like here, for future range addition, is that to allow more local entities to be able to use it for training?
Yes, so like if the city of Spokane, if their shooting range, firing range out by the river,
dam, yeah.
Somehow, is no longer available, just wanted to be cognizant of what future needs might be, because you don't want to just build to current.
But right now, it's just built for the sheriff.
Yes.
And
And the Air Force.
the Air Force?
Oh, okay.
So the small arms range side is what the Air Force is providing funding for. So yeah, they're kind of like, and then there's the training side, which is separate than the shooting side. Does that make sense? And the Air Force is part of the shooting small arms range training, since it's all training for them, but.
One of the governor's proposals before the legislature is to expand law enforcement training across the state and have more opportunities east of the Cascades. If Spokane, if training is expanded in the Spokane area, obviously firearms training is part of that training. We would need more lanes to accommodate that. And so that's why we always wanted to anticipate the potential for future expansion. Should that happen, we've been in communications with the Criminal Justice Training Commission that charters those academies for quite some time now. And so have always been kind of in those discussions about what would it look like to have more law enforcement training academies in the Spokane area? What are the assets that would be required to do that?
It's currently it's 10 weeks that you have to go over to the coast, which is.
Right.
For a lot of our people, they don't
But
want
then we
to.
also got a presentation that Shrek is looking at the site as well, right? Is there gonna be enough room for all of these uses
Yes.
on the site? Okay. And there's a plan, there's like some sort of,
There's enough space, there's not a master plan set up.
Well, in the conversation at the state level with regard to a regional training facility is leaning more toward Tri-Cities than it
I
is.
heard that when we were over
Yeah.
there in Olympia,
Yeah.
yeah.
Seems that the people in
Seems like the
Spokane
Tri-Cities-
wanna say we're still in the mix, but everybody in Olympia was saying it's Tri-Cities, not Spokane.
We have two
Interesting.
basic law enforcement academies each year that occur in Spokane. They're talking about adding at least a third. Maybe that's why Tri-Cities is being talked about now. But even with the existing two, the city of Spokane will say they are at their limit with facilities at the police academy down by Felts Field. By the time they try to do the two academies, plus when they have to do in-service training for their existing officers, and that's before you get to any advanced training.
Where's the location of the gas line that you're talking about? You have to test there too.
I would have to check with Bruce. I just know it's just shy of a mile away. And I think they've already done it.
Yeah, so, and I will confirm this, but it's my understanding that there's a gas line in Craig Road. Because that gas line extended is what's gonna serve Louisiana Pacific, and that's not a mile away. So that's why I was wondering, you know, when they, you know, I'm just curious as to what gas line they're tapping into and where did they get this mile when I know that there's one already in Craig Road.
Right. And I don't know if it's, what is the current size of the pipe? Will it meet the capacity? I have no idea if those are factors. I think the number I saw was something like 4,800 feet distance. I'm not sure which direction though.
Commissioner Jordan?
Sorry, I'm just trying to, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Just trying to understand, because I'm new to the project. So are you saying that typically a project like this would have an 8 to 10% margin for error kind of built in? And this was only 5, and I missed what the explanation as to why that was.
There were a number of things going on at the time. Like I say, from the time, this has been a project that's been discussed for a long time. So during the time of those discussions, project costs fluctuated greatly. We went from an assumed cost on final design, and then construction costs escalated dramatically. I think it was an attempt to perhaps try to rein in some of the costs. And then what happened is we went out to bid and costs came in far more affordable and less than that high projection. And so we did not, at that time, the feeling was that we should maintain a low contingency as opposed to the 8 to 10.
There's some more that feeds into that too. It's, you know, that's some of the contingency is philosophical by agencies, by entity, how much you use, what you think your risk is, where you're doing the work at. So I don't know that 8 to 10 is always a consistent number. This one was around 7%. The other piece that was driving this is our budget. Our budget was $40 million. So we knew what our design and our soft costs were. We knew what our construction bids were at, and we had $40 million. So the remaining was essentially what we could afford for a contingency. Like I said, I think it's about 6.8%.
So it's not 5?
No, it was, Randy's done some additional figuring these things. It's about, I think it's about 7%.
So who didn't ask DOT if we could bore or cut through, or if we could cut through the road that should have? It says design team did not confirm with DOT. So who dropped the ball there?
My understanding was
We have a lot of people
Right.
around this table that know a lot of
I'm just gonna check.
very high up people at DOT that could have maybe talked to some people and potentially gotten permission to cut through the road.
My understanding is that the design team had been in conversations with DOT, that there was more than one option listed as the way of being able to bring utilities to the site, that ditching was one of the options, and that kind of in the 11th hour, so to speak, was that WASDOT then backed away from that being an option. That's my understanding.
Okay, because I would think there's at least two people at this table who know a lot of people at DOT that could maybe change that outcome, maybe still potentially change that outcome.
But at this point, we've bored underneath it.
You've already done it.
We've done it because at that point, we were told that was the only option WASDOT was going to approve.
Okay.
And so we went ahead and bored, and of course, we ran into hard rock underneath the road that required to go to a more expensive boring process. So, yeah. But I know the WASDOT typically, I was personally speaking, was kind of surprised that ditching was initially an option, because usually the rule of thumb is they do not let you ditch across the state highway. So.
Can you touch a little bit on you mentioned landscaping?
Right.
But why does a building like this need landscaping?
So,
we don't, I don't, is this a facility you want to look welcoming to the public? I mean, I don't know if, do we want to create a,
Isn't our code that we have to have landscaping around buildings?
Yeah, but I mean, you can always use the argument that you want to go to zero irrigation, landscaping, native area, landscaping, there's a lot of rock in the West Plains you can use as decoration. So I don't know that you actually have to go to an irrigated landscaping system.
I mean, I don't know, do we want this to be an attractive, welcoming building where we have people wanting to approach it? I mean, kind of thing. So, and I assume you're gonna have a fence or an attractive nuisance or something.
Well, I mean,
Like
I was
that,
there, I was there last Friday, and I thought the 8-foot tall chain link fence with the concertina wire on top of it was very, very inviting, and certainly led us with well, God, we want to climb that. Yeah, so it's not an inviting facility.
Okay.
I think a couple of things though is that we do hold public classes out there.
Okay.
This is where we have 2 public classrooms out there that are for traffic school or traffic education program. This is also a place where all of our hires go. Civil service is located there. So when we are hiring lateral officers and entry level officers, these are prospective applicants. And they are coming to civil service, and this is their first impression of Spokane County, the agency. So, we do, recognizing the parameters of dealing with the Air Force security fence, we do want it to be, an inviting area. We also have, as part of these components in here, we have the canine training area. That needs to be grass. That is built into this project. There's certain other components. There's the training tower. There's the less lethal shoot house around it. Some of those we want grass areas for them to be able to work on and that kind of stuff. And of course, we do have Shrek coming, potentially in the future out there as well.
I think the other piece of this is, when we went through the essential public planning process, the essential public facilities planning process, the notion is some would say, why isn't this located in the urban core? Those kinds of questions. And so,
A training center?
Yeah.
Nobody's asking that.
well, I think there was a fair amount of discussion with regard to the Growth Management Act about where to site these facilities, if they need to be inside the UGA, those kinds of questions. And so I think part of this was also to be a good neighbor, that we wanted the facility to look nice, so that the neighbors wouldn't feel like it's a warehouse or something that's unattractive. Because I'm assuming that at some point in the future, the county is going to have to place other facilities throughout the region, and you don't want the first opposition to simply be because our stuff doesn't look great. And so I think that was part of the consideration, as well as how are we good neighbors to those people who drive that road, who live in that area, to make sure that we've done that. And again, so the original architect's depictions showed green around the building. I mean, as you extend further out into the parcel, it's natural, but around the building, it's grass, it's some limited landscaping. The biggest issue is whenever you have a design firm that's not from the region, Washington, everybody assumes it rains in Washington. And so they assume that that's statewide, and it's like, okay, great, we have this landscaping, but you've got no way to support the maintenance of the landscaping by irrigation. And so it was an oversight, and there's a cost to adding that in. We are very quickly getting to a point where if we're going to incorporate it, it should be incorporated.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, so today the ask is for an additional $350,000 to $500,000, is that correct?
Yes, I think we
2
settled.
million one.
What's that?
You total all this cost up here, 2 million one.
No, but that's.
But part of this is using the current contingency. This is why, this is,
Numbers.
I want to
in a
show you some
spreadsheet.
driving factors of why we've gone through the contingency. And then when we take a look at what the contingency is already addressing and what we think is still coming, we think that we're about 375 short.
So the very last sentence is what?
Yeah, I
I
caught
know,
that.
when I first started adding up the numbers, I was,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, I apologize.
go ahead.
So there are some other wants that you're gonna be coming back to us for. And typically on contingencies, it's to identify risk factors, and it's also to provide revenue for additional enhancements to the project. And so at this pace, we've already used up all the contingency. And then there's no room for additional enhancements. So there's no conversation about, well, we could do this and we could do that to make the facility better.
Right.
No, we can't, because funding has been exhausted on the project. So I guess in my mind, if those other things that you get to come forward and ask for are important, then in my mind, you need to find opportunities to change the budget and change the design. Wasn't Bernardo Wills, the local architect, working in partnership with a national firm on this?
They did the preliminary designs. Final design was Clark Nexon, that had specific expertise in building military firing ranges that meet the federal standards. So,
Well, I know that the architect of record was the national firm, but wasn't Bernardo part of the design team?
not that I'm aware of in the last phase.
So they used no local consultants to help do the project.
They did, but not architectural. I can get you a list of who those other contractors were that they partner with. I mean, Walker Construction's the general contractor. And then a lot of the mechanical engineering was done locally.
So I mean, I can appreciate the fact that, green grass, looks good. Green rock also looks good and doesn't require irrigation. I mean, they're just very simple things. And right across the street, that whole area is designed and zoned as light industrial. They are gonna be next to a warehouse. They are gonna be next to, commercial buildings and stuff. That's already part of the urban growth boundary. I mean, the 904 or 902 is the edge of the growth boundary. So that area is just destined to become more industrial. Anyway, okay, thanks.
And I would agree.
The rest of my comments are for executive session.
And I would agree. I think even the industrial buildings have some green space that softens the look. It's not a big footprint typically, but they have some landscaping incorporated in their designs.
I think at a minimum, the canine training areas, need to be grassed and, that kind of stuff, so they can train in there properly.
I understand that, yeah.
AstroTurf.
No one wants to watch that though afterwards.
I know. Hose it down.
I think to that point, given the canine stuff, thinking about the ongoing maintenance, thinking about the water costs out there, the mowing and all that sort of stuff.
Why?
I think it behooves us to consider as much xeriscaping as possible. Xeriscaping is not ugly. Xeriscaping is very attractive And quite honestly, if it's not in our code, I think we should be incorporating that more in our code. That reduces some of the green footprint that's needed just because of the maintenance that's required with it and the additional watering that's needed, especially during our times of the year where we know we have 4 or 5 heavy months of watering. So I think if the cost economics of this is much more attractive on the xeriscaping, I would suggest pushing it as much as we can to that angle.
So construction's almost complete. I mean, it sounds like August is gonna be, so it's not almost complete, we've still got several months. Are there other things that you, Commissioner French's point, are there other things that you anticipate that haven't been done that need to be done? And so are we really at this $350,000 to $500,000?
This is we consulted with Bruce Russell on this, obviously, and that's the number he thinks we need to finish this project.
I believe the biggest component left is really the EVOC driving course. We've already budgeted for the cost of the purchase of the land. So that's still going through the process of being separated out as a separate parcel. Included in the costs were the design work of that. So I would say the only unknown in my mind is if that design shows something that we don't anticipate. Right? Other than that, everything is pretty explicit in the design documents. I think the final walls will be up probably in the next week to 2. And at that point, they're going to be working on, like I say, finishing any exterior items, but really focusing on the build out of the interior.
Yeah, when I was out there on Friday, only the walls around the shooting range were up. You know, the other walls were in process and stuff, but, you know, I would, based upon my view of the project last week, I'd say they're probably somewhere in that 15 to 20% maybe range. So there's a lot of work that is left to be done. And a lot of that is electrical, mechanical, interior work. And we haven't even gotten to that part of it. So I'm really skeptical. I'd be pleasantly surprised, but really skeptical that this is going to get us to the end of the day. If they've got this many design errors and we're just now getting out of the ground, it doesn't give me any confidence that we're going to make it to the end of the day without them.
What's your sense of the absolute drop dead date as to when a decision needs to be made one way or the other on this stuff for the designers and for the change orders that are necessary?
You know, talking to Bruce, because, you know, Bruce is out of town for family emergency, and we asked if we wanted to push this back a week so that way he could be here because he can speak far more intelligently about it than anyone else. And he felt that the time crunch was significant enough that he wanted to move forward today. So I would say, based on that, we're getting close.
So the reason I ask commissioners is Bruce has, he's not here to be able to speak to it. Bruce has a project budget and tracking of what's been incurred to date, which categories have been spent out of. Randy's put his eyes on it. He has a couple of adjustments. I'd really like the chance to review that with all of you so that you have a better picture and overview of where things stand today to inform on a decision on this. So that would be my recommendation. I think we could have something in the next day or so.
But if we need to determine if we're,
I guess is a week. We're already here right now. I don't know that a week's going to be a deal killer.
And if this work has already been done, we're not holding up construction. What we're doing is we're delaying processing of maybe, well, and I don't even know, have these things already been billed and paid then? So who has not been paid out of these changes that are hanging out?
I think Bruce would have to answer that.
These seem to be pretty exact dollar amounts, which make me think you've either got the bill or you've paid the bill.
Right, I think these were the costs. I think what Bruce is trying to do here is enumerate the costs that were unanticipated that have shown up at the door so far. And then what he's trying to do is say, here's the ones that I anticipate still coming. Say, the question of if we're going to irrigate to support any landscaping, then we need to start thinking about that irrigation infrastructure, at least to be able to stub it out. You may never hook it up, but if you're gonna stub it out, you gotta stub it out. So I think that was Bruce's methodology here, was to give you a list of what were the components that have driven some of the contingency costs, and then his guesstimate of what was he aware of that he thought was coming, and what was his estimated price tag on it. That's how he came up with that range and kind of honed in about that 375 figure.
So I guess I'm on that piece of it. I mean, yes, you do have to stub out because you're gonna have to do some irrigation for the dog training and the dog facility side of it. But on the front, we could do as much dry scape as possible.
Right.
I have dry scape at my house.
Right.
When I make sure you're using rock, not bark, because the West Plains will blow away. So rock stays much steadier. So I think there's ways to do that with some of the natural grasses, and that kind of thing that look nice and, but we're still gonna have to have irrigation for the back, or wherever you put the dog facility, because they have to have the natural grass. It doesn't necessarily work for them. So.
Utilizing fire hydrants for that purpose really isn't a good idea.
No. So I think, to me, if you can talk to the landscape architect, I don't know whoever is doing that, to see that. And then I guess going back to that, is the gas really a mile away, and how we already trenched that. The trench was for the water and utilities with DOT, but at the, really seeing if the gas line is a mile away or not would be, to me, I think a big difference in cost.
And so my understanding is all the infrastructure that was off-site has been brought on site.
So it's already been done.
Yeah, and I don't recall if all of them were on the opposite side of the road, and so they all came through the boring, or if one of those was on the same side and didn't require to come through the boring under the road. But my understanding is that all off-site infrastructure has now been brought on site.
So then it sounds like we'll talk about this next week.
Okay.
Monday, I guess. So do we want to go into executive session, or do we not need to at this point in time? Do you want to go into executive session?
I think that's a conversation we need to have.
Do you want to do it? I mean, I don't know if Bruce would be back next week, because Bruce is probably the one we need to have helping guide that discussion.
Would be a good idea to accept the financial.
Let's go ahead and defer it until next week and have the conversation with Bruce.
I have to agree for that. Okay.
Let us know when. Let us know when. I think we've been participating in a lot of those conversations, so have a fair amount of understanding and information on that. So.
Okay.
Maybe during the planning session.
All right. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I canceled my brother, so I don't have a hard stop. So something else.
Okay.
What?
Okay. Ashley, welcome to the other end of the table.
Thank you. So I'm gonna chat with you guys about two items today. The first one I'm just presenting on my own, and then the second I will ask Josh and Frank to come up with me. The first one is just an update. I wanted to provide some information to all of you about an updated interlocal agreement that we will have in front of you next week for signature with STA. So this is the same continuation of a benefit that we offer our employees through our partnership with STA. We currently offer all of our Spokane County employees utilization of a bus pass for them to commute. And we offer that for free to our employees. And so we just have an updated contract. It hadn't been reviewed in over 5-6 years. That had some old language in it. Hadn't had your guys' signatures. It is less than $30,000. So this year's renewal is $28,000 maximum. It's based on ridership year over year, but we have a maximum level set do not exceed. So usually we are good with CEO approval at the dollar value, but we wanted to clean up the contract between both parties and then update it to a 5-year term. We've been having to re-sign year over year over year, which just gets complicated at year end, having to quickly get signatures through. So it's just an updated 5-year. I don't have it printed or in your packet. You guys will have it in your consent next week, but really it's, like I said, just a continuation of benefits that we're already offering our employees. We have great ridership. They've partnered really well. Our groups have, especially in the last year. We've been very thankful to STA, who has done events with us for our employees where they've actually sat in the HR office with our parking coordinator, Julie, and we've opened it up for employees who don't have a bus pass. Please come in, please get one. We offer them during our new hire orientation, so all of our new employees are afforded an opportunity for a bus pass at that point in time. When they do leave county service, or if they leave county service, that pass is then canceled through that termination process, so that they don't continue to stay out there for non-employees. So it's been a great program. We have great ridership. We've seen it increase in the last couple of years. COVID took a little bit of a halt on it, but we have seen a lot of our employees use it and are very thankful. So just wanted to brief you guys and let you know that contract will come back in front of you, that will be on the 5-year term. Any questions that I can answer?
So is there a way to get a graph of the numbers as to, how many employees use it?
Yes, so they send us a monthly report just so that we can track that. It doesn't tell us employees, it says rides, essentially, so it tracks the rides. So we see several hundred rides every month that people are using. So I think even we might have someone in this room who uses public transit pretty frequently. So Mr. Valencia, I think you are someone that utilizes that program, and I think it's a really good opportunity for those employees that even when they don't have a vehicle, like I'm dropping mine off at the shop today and I thought, man, I wonder if there's a bus line anywhere near me, so just opportunities that sometimes you don't even recognize you're going to need at different phases in your life.
So the ID doesn't act as a pass?
No.
Okay, okay. At the
No.
city of Spokane, they integrated that into the ID somehow. I'm not sure how.
I'm not sure either, and I'm not sure if they will continue to with the new passes either, so.
They're going to a new
Yeah, we got a
system.
new pass program now, and
So so how do you go about getting a pass?
So if they would like a pass, any employee is welcome to come to the HR building at any time. We give them a form, they fill it out for us, and we issue them a pass. It's also, like I said, so during new hire orientation, so any new hire goes through the orientation in HR, then usually it's their first week of employment. We specifically carve out a time in that new hire orientation as well to update them, let them know that it's available, and then oftentimes most of the employees are actually filling out the form that day and receiving their pass that day. We have not received the updated passes yet from STA. They're waiting on this agreement to be signed. So as soon as we get this agreement signed next week and over to them, STA will be coming on site. We'll be partnering with them, letting our employees know that we do need to reissue the new passes, and we'll be holding open office hours, so to speak, to make it really easy. We'll have a table set up and just usher people in as they come in to swap out their passes. Again, they'll be available to do that anytime, but we're gonna ensure that we have extra staffing and kind of run an event, so to speak, to do our best to get all of those passes updated for our employees. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next up, I will invite Joshua Groh and Frank Cervantes. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes.
Perfect. Up to the tables. So there's a PowerPoint on the screen for y'all to follow along with me.
Sorry, can you move your bag?
Oh,
so
yeah,
you can
yeah.
sit down?
You're okay. No, it's fine. It's just spreading out.
So we are here today to chat with you about a paperless benefits project that the Human Resources Department is spearheading. We'll chat a little bit about current state and future state. Current state, just to kind of give you all a heads up, everything in the HR department, to my exhaustion, is pretty much still paper. And so that includes benefit enrollment. So anytime that a new employee starts with us or an existing employee has a life change, we have to manually print packets, hand them to employees. They hopefully fill them out. For new hires, you have 30 days, and for also a life event, there's 30 days to get that paperwork back into HR. It then routes through multiple people, which we'll see on the next slide here in a minute. But it's touched way more times than any piece of paper should be. Manually entered into our systems, manually faxed or emailed to our benefit carriers. And we cross our fingers and say a prayer that nothing gets transposed in the process. Additionally, we are oftentimes manually trying to reach out to employees to remind them of the dates that are coming, because there's no online tracking system for that. On average, it takes 30 minutes per new hire or for an employee change by someone who is in the Human Resources Department. In 2021, looking at numbers, that equated to 21% of a full-time equivalent position, just tracking paperwork for benefit enrollment, which is 410 hours, which equates to $14,555 just tracking papers. As all of you know, the HR department is pretty lean, and so to have almost a quarter equivalent of an employee just tracking paperwork does not make good business sense, nor is it what our employees or our new employees are asking for. The next slide gives you just a brief overview, again, of all the touches. So the form is received by HR, the coordinator is giving physical forms then to our specialists, who were manually adding in ID numbers, hire dates, effective dates. All of that is handwritten on these forms by county staff. County staff then gives that paper back to the coordinator to manually hand key into PeopleSoft. Hand keying in includes not just the benefit selection, but beneficiaries, spouses, their information, right? All of that has to be hand keyed in by an HR staff. And this is for everything: medical, dental, life, AFLAC, you name it. It has to be touched by a human body right now. The HR coordinator then gives those forms back to benefits specialist. She then double checks manually that what was entered is actually correct. That form is then handed back to the coordinator, who then has to scan it and send it to all of the different entities, including our own internal payroll team, because that does not manually or automatically forward to that group. We then hand the document to our extra help employee, who scans it yet again into our master Docfinity employee files. And then they have to be committed, those files, into the personnel files in Docfinity. So it's a lot of touches for a form that could be digital. So as we talk about the next slide, future state, the goal is for benefit enrollment and benefit changes to be completed electronically by our employees, to eliminate the paper forms that are currently occurring, and to have automatic reports that just send the benefit data to our carriers. So we're not having to manually send our carriers all that information. Additionally, in future state, we will be able to put in things to audit and ensure that dependents that are be adding to plans should be covered by our plans, right? So our plan very clearly states that it should be a spouse. And so through an online program, we could have employees upload a copy of a marriage certificate or things like that to ensure that we are not paying for people to be on our plans that technically don't fall within the parameters of our plans. We, as far as I know, have not done an audit on our existing employees in many years. So once the system goes live, it also enables us to have the ability to create maybe during open enrollment this year or in an off time, requiring those documents to be uploaded for verification. So we could determine if we have appropriate people on our plans or if we're covering people who should not be on our plan. So it really opens up an opportunity for us to ensure that we are not covering people we should not be. The next slide, please, Ron. As far as benefits from this project, I've already talked a lot about it, eliminating the need for that in-person person, and the time spent on administrative tasks can actually now be used to support strategic initiatives that this group has tasked us with regarding benefits for our employees that have a massive budgetary impact. So this meets our pillar of values around customer service and financial stewardship. It also would allow the HR team members to clean up data, our benefit processes and programs, which also is pre-work that we need to do anyways for the new ERP system. So this is kind of some front end work of cleanup that we're going to be required to do anyways. Employees are asking us for this. Many of you started in the last few weeks, a couple of months, and I had some raised eyebrows of, wow, we're turning in papers, okay. So it is something that we are being asked by our new employees, and as we look toward becoming the employer of choice and really providing innovation to our employees, this is critical. And from an ROI perspective, just looking at the raw math, 5-year payoff based on 2021 numbers. That said, I just pulled the recruiting classes so far that we've had in 2023, and we're trending right now at 624 new hires in 2023, and those numbers previously were based on 410 new hires. So there is a possibility that this gets paid off sooner rather than later. On the next slide, please, I'm actually going to have Josh speak to the project itself. Josh Crote and Frank have been working through this with a third party to ensure that we get this done right the first time. So I will ask you guys to chat about that, please.
So when we initially started this project, a vendor we had used before for PeopleSoft was a student, but through our meeting with them, we were not happy with what they presented us and their timelines and their dollar figure. So we met with another group called Work Strategy. This group actually came recommended by Oracle for their PeopleSoft experience, and especially building this particular module for PeopleSoft. They have worked with large organizations with much more complex benefits than what the county can offer, and these organizations are, as far as we can tell, happy with the product. The reason why we want to use this outside vendor is the complexity of this program. Internally, we just don't have the time and the resources, and when I say resources, the manpower to build this and build this appropriately and correctly the first time. And being on this side and also on the other side, I know if a program is not built correctly the first time and is not implemented correctly, buy-off from the employees is substantially limited, and they have extreme doubts on continuing using the product. So we want to make sure this goes off as successfully as possible, and so that's why we're choosing to use or want to use an outside vendor to build this product. And not to mention, if we do it internally, that we're not, in the end, who knows, we may have to still bring in an outside vendor so to fix any mistakes or rebuild it, so it could duplicate the cost and energy to do it.
And to jump in very quickly, I don't know if this group understands how thin our IT group is on this side. So we have one dedicated full-time staff in human resources who is HRIS, and we have essentially one dedicated full-time staff in IT who is PeopleSoft everything. So we do not have the support internally to stand this up in the time frame that we would like to see this stood up, nor is it something that we can task them with as they continue to work through all of their regular daily activities.
So after working with Work Strategy, seeing what they can do, hearing about them themselves as a vendor, they've provided us an estimate of about $75,000 to build this product.
which is not what the sheriff's office just asked for, so significantly less. The initial cost does come in right around $69,000. We do have a $6,000 contingency built in there, understanding that there could be additional costs that come with some of the integration and interfaces between some of our vendors. So that's why we have the approximate $75,000 in there, so that we make sure that we have a reasonable contingency built in depending upon what's needed as we get through this project.
The source of this money is HR had budgeted to use consultants in 2022. That money was not used, and so we would like to carry that money over from 2022 to 2023 to cover the cost of this project.
Which we did put in the required forms for budget, so those monies were secured and carried into 2023 for us.
Yes. And then for this project timeline, we wanted to brief the commissioners on this project first, and then anticipate that bring it to the consent agenda for your official approval next week, and then getting the project started as soon as possible, and then have a project deadline of June 30th. That will give us time, this length of time to build, test it, make sure everything's working correctly before we roll it out to the entire county, especially to make sure we work out any bugs before open enrollment, because that is generally, when you get a project like this, where the bugs really come out. And so we'll be able to have many months of testing and real world application before we roll it out for open enrollment.
In addition to that, we really just want to leverage what we can do for this project and ERP. So the front end of this is, I think, critical to stay on time so that we don't rush through that and we actually put in the data correctly and accurate, so that we don't have to redo that when it comes to the ERP HR team.
What questions can we answer for you?
Well, that was my question. How does this connect to the other major like software upgrades, right, that we're considering here at the county? So you've already been anticipating that and figuring out how it can connect best with whatever future software or vendor that gets chosen in that process.
Yes, so this is, we were gonna have to do the pre-work anyways, which was cleaning up legacy data, old benefit plans. So this really, maybe it's probably going a little further, so to speak, than what would be fully required for ERP integration with the whatever system we end up in. But this is a springboard that will enable us to be successful. It's something also, as I look at the HR department staff, if we can get this locked in now, when it comes to ERP, it's then going to free up some of their time to be able to be more engaged with the ERP, because right now they are very thin, and asking them to, 2 years from now, when we're really full legs into the HR and getting ready to flip it on, they're not gonna have the capacity for the testing and the clean and the review of ERP if they're still so mired in the day-to-day paper pushing, literally, that's occurring in that department right now. So it really is the launch pad to get that group ready to be successful for ERP.
Sorry if I'm scaring anybody, just joining from the back here. One more clarification too. This project, as well as the ERP project, are both project management run initiatives. So these two are not happening in a vacuum. We have the resources working together to make sure that these fit together scheduling wise, and that we're working together as a team. So last clarification too, this project it's been through all the right process steps. It's been through our governance team, which is a cross-functional set of IT leaders, budget, to make sure that there's no negative effects and that everybody's on board with the timing and resources needed. So that's it for me.
I think it's a great project to do, and I think it does help to get it done ahead of time and get everything into a system that then will transfer into the next system, whatever that is
Randy knows, and feeds Randy, I'm gonna ask you, feeding into then payroll and all of that, it's critical. Yeah, it is critical, so.
And the last point that just, for me, it's something that it just sits in the back of my mind all the time. We're already paying PeopleSoft for the benefits module, so let's use it, right? So for me, it's just that extra step of it's there, it's available, we just need to get it set up. And so it's time for us if we're going to be successful moving forward.
Appreciate all the work you guys have put into looking at how much the current costs are and then, you know, what the return on the investment is. So thank you for doing that homework.
Great. Not seeing any other questions, so thank you. So we'll see that on the agenda on the 14th.
Yes.
Thank you.
See you later.
Good morning, Gil. How are you doing?
Want me, is this okay right here?
Yeah, perfect right there. I'm not sure who's with you.
Oh, this is Michael, Michael Lindenseco. He's my senior facilities manager.
Come sit at the
Come on, you
table.
can sit down.
Yes,
He's part of this big overall project.
there we go.
So if I mess anything up, he can jump right in.
Perfect. I'm not sure where turns went, but you're welcome to go ahead and get started.
Okay, good morning, commissioners. I am here this morning. We have some purchase recs on some capital projects coming up that we are starting, but I really wanted to give this kind of overall, these are the items on our budget for this year, but how they really all work together. So they're all part of the bigger picture, which is House Bill 1257 for the Clean Buildings Act. So all of our buildings that we've identified here on campus, and now we're actually we're helping out the fairgrounds. We have a little bit more knowledge on the Green Bills Act than they do, so we're gonna try to partner in with them overall on this. But some of the items that we're looking at for 2023 that were in our budget for this year, we're actually looking at for the Clean Buildings Act, we're looking for the 500,000 that we'll be doing for getting a design team on board for 2023 to actually come up with a design once we present our feasibility study, which we'll be trying to do probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks. We hired a firm here in 2022 to come up with a strategy that we did the preliminary energy numbers on, and we'll actually be presenting the results of that. And then that's what that capital ask will be for, is to bring a design team on so we can look at what we need to change and purchase. These preliminary numbers that I did for the 6-year capital plan for 24, 25, 26, the spends on those, these were really, I grabbed window replacements, and I grabbed everything that I could grab to meet the EUI targets. So once we get the design team on board and we design what we need to change to get us to those standards, these numbers may vary for the 6-year out term. But I think they're gonna vary on the lower end, not above that. So some of the things that we are actually doing right now is we are evaluating the purchase of a cooling tower. We're looking at our different options right now. Everybody knows when we hit that summer, I think it was August, where we had 90-degree plus every day for an entire month. We saw our system actually lost ground over time to keep these buildings cool. We got maybe about a 5-day window, and if the nights don't cool down, our chiller plant actually starts to lose capacity. So that money is to actually purchase and update, add some more capacity to that system. The other one we have right now, and this is the one we're here for, we have purchase recs going out right now for automation upgrades to our building systems. So our system as a whole for the county campus and all of our buildings, it actually runs on a Johnson Controls integrated BAS system. So all of our temperature controls, our setbacks on the weekends, our setbacks on our air handling system. Everything is controlled by this brain. Well, this brain is too old now, so it doesn't work with the IT security upgrades that we have with our IT department. So we are looking to upgrade the hardware so we can upgrade the software, which will in turn give us the ability not only to really interface with a lot of the new equipment that'll be coming in for the Green Buildings Act. But right now we do all of our power monitoring readings. We do them all manually by hand. So we're trying to integrate that all into the system so we can see it just like your dashboard on a car. We want to be able to see what's going on in these buildings real time. And that's part of that ask for the 300. One of the purchasing recs you're going to see here shortly is we had the hardware alone upgrade on that was about 200. We're doing a lot of this stuff in-house, our own resources. And with dealing with JCI, we were actually able to get that down to 137. So we got a major savings on that. So we should be able to do a little bit more integration with some of the monies that we have in that. And we'll see where we can get the most bang for the buck. And then last but not least, the Public Works building replacement. We are putting that out. I'm started the spec on that. We'll be putting that one out to bid, and I'll be putting it into the south side as base bid, and then the windows that are in the other parts of the facility. But the biggest thing that we've seen this winter on that is, we're getting water intrusion, we're getting discoloration, we're losing a lot of the cooling in the summertime through those windows. So I think that one alone might even help us a little bit easier to grab this green bill standard. So, and right now, just rolling back to the green bills, what we're looking at on our side is we went out to a lot of the firms that came and solicited to us to get us to those. They looked at a lot of really cosmetic changes and insulation, stuff that we've been looking at on our own that we can probably do in-house cheaper and actually even contract out to that to get it cheaper. But what we're looking at is the infrastructure. Our boiler plant right now is 50 years old. Our refractories on our units are starting to fail. And the thing that when you look at that, and you look at the time frame, some of us that have been in the industry a long time, that's back when, boy, they were just pushing natural gas. They really wanted you to convert out of that electric and get more into natural gas. And that system is probably running at about, if our numbers are correct, about 60% efficiency. So the idea is that these buildings will convert them over, like we've done some of the newer buildings under the Energy Star, that will actually try to put in 90 plus units. So we can actually easily hit those EUI targets for the Department of Commerce.
So will you be replacing those units with just high efficiency natural gas units, or are you gonna try and convert everything over to electric?
Well, no, we're looking right now at the natural gas side of it. But these are the smaller units, the Fulton, they're the hydronic heating systems. We're actually trying to phase out our reliance of steam. Outside of just the heating portion of it and our hot water, we're looking at some different options there. We looked at if we were to decommission our steam plant, we're looking at the overall savings if we put in, say, a central hot water system at our plant. But it's something that we don't need stationary engineers to sit and watch. We're having a really, really hard time trying to find that skill set anymore in this town.
So if you're gonna be replacing them with natural gas units, you need to get that taken care of before.
Yes.
And stuff, so.
Yeah, so
So at some point, as you look at the upgrades and everything, the other thing that I think we're gonna encounter is a significant upgrade to our electrical service to this campus. Because I don't think that we have adequate service. And I can't remember, are we double fed or are we single fed into the courthouse?
Into the courthouse, we're single
fed and stuff. So at some point, you might want to look at, if we're going to have to do significant upgrades to the electrical system, is now the time to look at being double fed so that, you know, from a security standpoint, we're not relying on somebody not hitting a transformer or taking down a pole.
So that was when I did that original presentation last year. That is part of this 15 million over that time.
Okay.
That's also to replace, and I left a picture in here of these aging switch gears and bringing in double feed systems. You know, we'd like to even look at where we pull power from, whether we can backfeed these systems. But that's the plan and that's part of that. We had brought in Kaufman Engineering. This was about a year and a half ago when we went down and looked at that, and at the numbers at that time per the public safety building, the jail and the courthouse, we were looking at roughly right around that 6 million mark.
NAC.
Yeah, NAC. So we want to try to that over that 15 million. Not only does that take care of that heating source of it, we can do our upgrades on our cooling side of it because we now have the chiller capacity for that. It's our cooling tower capacity, which is, thank God, it's a little bit less of a cost to upgrade that portion of it. And then also the electrical feeds. So really this is really kind of the start of it, and this is the start of it with JCI. And I know you'll be seeing some purchase recs coming down the road here for one for the hardware, one for the software. We'll be doing the integration of the power meters. We've successfully put in 2 now that we're actually monitoring through kind of a electronic system, but it doesn't really look like the data we want to get. So that's why when we do this upgrade, we'll be able to do that.
So I'm just gonna make sure, so the items in 2023 are budgeted for, correct?
Yes.
They were budgeted, so,
Yes.
yeah. And then the out years, we'll have to figure out that funding.
Yes. 2 of these, one that I just briefly wanted to go over too is we are doing kind of a preliminary look at doing a build out for a courtroom on the 2nd floor. I think everybody's aware of that. We just haven't put any of the numbers out because we think this will be another one of those that we'll probably do, kind of like the first floor up there. We really have gotten to the point where we've got a little bit more knowledge about the courthouse and what's under the skin. So we'll probably be doing that with some selective demolition. And then I think it lines up really good with our trades groups that we have here, our county employees, and we'll probably take that project on. Providing we can get the courts, we'll have to look at some different modular furniture ideas.
Which location?
The 2nd floor where the budgeting group is right now. And
Okay, so that is, okay,
They've already been measuring.
In
All
fact,
right, well,
yeah.
and
I moved in week 3, they're like, when are you moving out?
So, no,
They're very eager to get their courtroom.
I had heard that they were looking at that, but in my mind, I thought, that's just not big enough, that doesn't seem like a big enough area.
Because if you look in the room, it was divided at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Original room went all the way down.
Okay.
It's a non-jury courtroom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
first appearances, right?
All right.
Okay.
So
Okay, because I've heard, I think it might have been Ron told me they were looking, that they were in there doing stuff, and I was like, that just doesn't seem big enough, so, but okay. If
So
it-
those are some of the options that we sent over, and as we get closer to that, and we know what the costs are for the selective demolition and the equipment, the IT side of it, HVAC modifications that we're gonna be making, we'll put that all together and then we'll bring it back to the board. So you guys will know what the total cost is.
So one time we were talking about maybe relocating or consolidating the law library on the 2nd floor. And so where did that conversation go?
Last conversation I had with, he was the residing Judge Clark, is that he did not or relocate it. So that's where we kind of left it at that. We had given some options for utilizing that space for the courtroom because it had a little bit more room to it, and then potentially bringing the library across the hall over to where the budgeting area and stuff is now, but we couldn't really get it. I think it was the difficulty of moving the library, which I didn't really understand, but
Books.
yeah, we had presented those options to Superior Court, so they did get those options.
I think it's
But at the end of the day, whose choice is it?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want the
Pretty sure it's not
library, you want a
Superior
courtroom.
Court.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
So Randy and I recently met with Law Library, and I think what the message that we took out is it is critical that they maintain a location on site, and that they keep their books and their forms and have the space to do that. We didn't speak to the exact location of where they need to be. You know, me and my paper, I had the question of, do we need the books here? And yes, we do. I did learn that. So we didn't dig much deeper into that conversation a few weeks ago. But I think it could be a question that is asked as we look at different opportunities, but they would still need a space for their materials. I was thinking maybe we could put them in other libraries, but that's not a possibility. So we would, if they are relocated, they would definitely still need the space for all of their materials.
Yeah, because I remember when I did one of my stints on that board, they had discussed that before they came to this current location, we rented a space like in the middle of downtown in an office building.
Yeah.
And so clearly, they don't have to be here. I think it's more they prefer to be here.
And they have been tracking stats, so I'll give it to them. So they do get a lot of foot traffic in there, and I think it's helpful for them in their opinion to be on site, because people can walk from the courtroom, go get the forms they need, go look at the book, you know, if they need to in between sessions. So they have found value being located on site, and so are hopeful to be able to maintain that presence so that our community is served with them available right here as they're already on site doing their court business. Okay.
That's great.
So I think one of the challenges too, if I remember, Gil, was those big pillars in the law library would be a challenge that, I mean, I don't know if it's insurmountable or not, but I know that they have massive pillars.
I mean, from the library, in order to go any further west, is that wall that's there is it's one of the original courthouse walls. So even the cut through that we did for the law library to get that office, we found a window that used to all the way down to those two turret offices. Those are just windows. So we were able to actually modify that structurally without affecting anything, since it was an existing window.
And then in some of the conversation with Superior Court, they like to have the law library there too as well. You know, as does the Bar Association upstairs, there's some connectivity between that. I just think that if there was a better location that didn't have our public going through security to go up there, that it might be a better opportunity for them if it was located, you know, on the campus as well. So, I mean, it's an option, but I thought the option was kind of off the table because of the pillars and the construction part of it. But if it's not, then, you know. There's also some talk about the jury room, because the jury room is set up a little bit different, and the jury room would be relocated, and that could become a courtroom as well. So not a small courtroom like the one they're contemplating for Amber in the budget's office, which would be just like plea agreements and first appearances and some video capability.
And that was the only directive we had. It was for potentially max occupancy of 25 people in there. So we felt we could design it in that space.
Yeah.
Commissioner French.
I thought at one time, there was conversation about maybe putting another courtroom over in the Broadway building. I'm just thinking, is that a possible location for the library? You gotta go through security over there, but the attorney's having a pass. So, I mean, it's whether it's there, whether it's here, Is it more important to have a functioning courtroom here or a law library? I don't have the pay grade to make that decision, but that's another option that was out there.
I think that'd probably be with Larry, only because of most of the large open spaces that we have over in that building, we've put walls in, we've modified HVAC, we've turned it really into cubicle areas, and offices, and so it's really been broken up other than the other small courtroom over there. All the other ones on the other floors, we've pretty much turned into office space.
Okay.
So my understanding too with the law library is that there's a lot more pro se, I think is the right term, of people that are trying to represent themselves in the last 5 years that has caused an increase in the use of the law library. So as they're in front of the judges and they don't have everything they need, then the judges are sending them there to take care of that, so.
And I think Ashley Callan was going to actually look at a kiosk with that information, that they kind of wanted to measure, whether or not now that a lot more people are using, the internet, to research a lot of that information, whether or not that will get a lot more buy-in as the years go by.
So I think that's part of why they've been tracking the numbers and all of that to show that it's actually used more than people think.
Exactly. The other thing that I thought was notable that I didn't realize is here at the law library, a person can go get a form or two forms, the actual form that they need, which might cost $1. When they go to other locations, they actually have to purchase the entire packet of court forms, which then costs them more. So people that might already be on a budget, so to speak, are able to save money by getting the 1 or 2 forms printed for them on site from the law library, that they would have to go off-site to get an entire packet. So I didn't recognize that either, and I thought that was an interesting call out that was made in the last meeting that we had with them.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up too, in exploring the jail law library, we had a requirement to have books as well. And we were gonna have Chris Anderson, it was by decree, by Judge Quackenbush at the time. And so I questioned that and said, do we actually have to have books, or can we use Westlaw or some of the other platforms that are out there to do that work for us? We haven't got that far to go down and talk to them yet, but it seems like, because it's expensive, to buy the books all the time, they have to be replaced all the time. And Westlaw has it at your fingertips, so there would probably have to be some tutorials or something that goes with it, but it would sure save on the, having to have the books all the time.
I think you have to amend the consent decree, though.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. That's that Brown case.
Yep.
Yeah, we've still got it up over there, so it's in his office.
Still in the queue over there?
No, it's in the chief's office, so, it should be.
I'd like to get the answer though.
It's available.
So the challenge at the jail is that you have to put in a kite to go there, which is a request form to go there. We could probably service maybe 25 a week. Well, now they have tablets. And if we had Westlaw on the, from the tablets, they don't have to put a request in, they can sit in their cell and do the research. So that's why I'd really like to get, the information on that and get down in front of them and see if that's a platform that we can go to,
Makes sense.
I was just gonna say about the charging for, a sheet as opposed to a packet. I don't think that matters where the county law library is located. They can, if they're across the street, they can still just charge for one sheet rather than a full packet. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be on the second floor in order to only charge for one sheet, so.
It's just convenience when they're in the courtrooms and the judge is saying, you need to go do this to be able to really, I don't know, maybe Chris has more insight, but it's like, but there's definitely, when I went and toured some of the courtrooms and watched some of the proceedings, it was like people trying to represent themselves. It's like, you need this form and you need to go.
There are definitely inconveniences with getting involved in the justice system, so.
Yes, well, some of them are, victims or family law,
Correct.
all of that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah. But those people aren't defending themselves if they're victims.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of moms in divorces that are trying to.
That's something different, that's okay, okay.
Or they might be
One other
seeking a
thing.
protection order. Right? They might be seeking a protection order from someone who's abusing them and trying to get the right paperwork figured out.
Which is all handled through the clerk's office, correct? Doesn't Tim have,
I think
we
he's
give
got
him
the
additional
packet.
people?
He's-
But we gave him additional people to handle those instances, and those are streamlined,
The
correct?
county bar office also sells a packet of the family law forms, and it's
Yeah, they do
a
that.
substantial portion of their budget is derived from those, so.
So the one other thing that Ms. Callan had told me as well is many of our judges actually use that library as well. So they will go over and grab the books. Many of them prefer paper books still. And so she did mention that having that library on the back end means that the judges potentially are not using county budgets to buy their own books for their own chambers. So that was one other thing that she had mentioned about the convenience of it being close to their courtrooms.
Just one other facilities thing that we did want to go over with the group. We haven't finalized any plans, but we do have a claim out. The awnings on the main tower have failed. So especially the one on the south side. So when you stand out on the balcony of the tower up top, the actual awning up top there is actually starting to fracture. So we were able to get an assessment of it. We did file a claim on it, so it is claimable. We do have a group, Pioneer. These were an offshoot of some other groups that do the historical roofing materials. They are evaluating it right now, but in our last meeting, there is a possibility we will be scaffolding the front of the courthouse again. So I might have to look at some alternatives to entry into the courthouse for that short amount of time until we can get those rebuilt. So they used originally they had like a terracotta tile up there on those awning covers. And when they did the rebuild 10 years ago, they had taken them off and it was kind of like a pre-poured assembly. And we have some pictures of it that will show the group. I can send some of them around, but they just, over time, the ice and everything that's fallen off on these, the way that they put the angles on them, the very ends of them, the waffle, actually holds water. So I think it's seeped in, froze, sun gets on it, and we've been finding little pieces of this stuff. So we started this last summer, but we finally have gotten to the point now where they think they're coming up with some ideas to fix it. So I've ran over some of the ideas to Megan Duval down at the city, and we'll submit those to her too once we come up with a really good design. I want them to try to put something on there that's gonna last with the historical tower. But so far from our assessment, that has been the only item. We do have one spire we need to do a little bit more investigation on. It's tilting just a little bit, but we'll evaluate that one when we're up there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Jeff McMorris.
This is just a quick update on an item looking before you on consent next week. Pending your approval to do so, the annual GSI contract is going to be before you. There'll be two separate resolutions. The first contract is $200,000, the status quo to last year. $75,000 of that is the base investment, which is the regional visionary membership level. The other $125,000 is the economic development partnership services.
Wasn't Regional Visionary last year, or the year before, 51, like 51.5-ish?
That
75
is-
seems like a big increase from where we were.
Correct, even though the 51.5 is what they advertise.
Yeah.
This is Stanaquota last year, you guys provided 75,000.
Got it. Okay. But the visionary cost is
Correct,
still
I still
the
believe it's
51.
51.
Okay,
That sounds
okay.
correct, yes.
All right.
So 75,000 will cover a visionary plus a little extra. And then the 125, so that'll be one contract for 200,000. The other contract is the Advantage Spokane website. The goal of that website is to provide information for businesses looking to relocate to this area, kind of a one-stop shopping on different factoids about the area. And same as last year, the county will be providing 13,000 for that website.
Do others also contribute to that website?
Yeah, there's
I don't remember.
5 to 10 groups, I don't remember the exact amount, and it's kind of prorated out.
So the cities,
If you just look on the website, anybody who is on the website is participating. It's a pay to play.
but they just kind of break it out.
Correct.
Okay. So the 125, is that the economic development dollars that flow through the state?
This is in addition to that, is my understanding.
Have we gone out to bid for other chambers or business economic development services in the area?
Yeah.
For those?
We've not. GSI has been that economic side. And then because we designate them, I think every 2 years as the EDO, then that's separate funding that they get through Commerce.
That's a separate commerce funding, okay.
About 160,000 a year. Commerce.
So do you have the contract from last year to review?
I have
So
the
Chris and I are.
I have the draft of this
so we can-
year's, which is
yeah.
status quota last year.
Okay,
I can send them on to you.
That'd be
And that'll be in next week's packet too.
okay, thank you.
No, you can go.
I was just gonna say, from an historical standpoint, we did several years ago reduce the amount of funding that we provided GSI from an economic development standpoint to divert that money into the 3 PDAs. And so
$70,000.
yeah, we pay 50,000 to the University District, and we're paying, I think we're still paying 60,000 for Northeast PDA.
Not
Anymore, we stopped that? Yeah. But, so that was the incubation money to get those PDAs underway.
It was just for 3 years. I
Yeah.
think we did 60, so a total
Yeah.
of 180, but we're past that now.
I think the only PDA, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, I think the only PDA that we still contribute money to is the U District.
U District.
Yeah, because we don't have a revenue sharing with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just do a set 50,000 with them. Since you keep too hard to figure out sales tax and increased property tax, all that, since it's all within the city of Spokane, that we're just doing a set amount.
But the other PDAs with the, whatever the tax increment that's in place, you can kind of see what the, where that's coming from.
Yeah.
In terms of county, cities contribution, okay.
Yeah.
And when we.
You know, I do get concerned that, I mean, I probably need to get up to speed. You know, we started the PDAs way back and then it took forever to kind of get off the ground and get them funded to have actual staff. I still worry about the Northeast PDA because it has the most challenges with all the brownfield
Right.
and small lot sizes and all those other things. In getting that momentum to actually start being able to have assets. So, I mean, it may just be a consideration whether or not we want to invest, you know, in the PDAs moving forward. Or else ones that need more investment. Because I just worry that, I mean, I've seen, you know, I helped set up that PDA and we started researching it in 2010 and then got it set up and then it took forever to get the funding, to get the director in place. But there's still no assets that I'm aware, like there's some incremental tax money coming in, but very little. So anyway, just a comment that it's gonna need more help because there's more
We didn't
challenges.
invest ARP dollars, the city and the county both did.
So there is a pot now of ARP dollars that is an asset for the PDA.
I mean, they can spend it on anything, but no, their financial outlook is in better shape now than they've ever been in. Our treasurer, I think
Probably just need to get an update on it.
at the last meeting, I mean, we've got pretty good chunk of change. The financial outlook is better now
Good.
than it's ever been.
And
So, I mean, we're no S3R3, but really nobody is. So.
But, you know, and Josh and I have been working on, we just responded to an RFI for a Canadian company that would come into the Northeast PDA. And one of the conversations we're having at S3R3 is that this new CEO that we would hire for S3R3 is going to be external to bring businesses to Spokane County. And so part of that will go to NEPDA.
Well, yeah, if you can get the
Arvin, and
infrastructure in
Westwind.
place, I
Well,
mean,
that's why the ARP
that's
money is
very
there.
expensive.
So-
And
so-
we're also looking at potential expansion of the boundary of the NEPDA. You know, one of the things is they don't really have large swaths of land. So there is conversation about potentially expanding to the north, but then at the same time, there's some discussion at expanding and taking in all of Market Street, rather than using Market as a boundary, so only having one side of Market Street, extending it over to, it's a Haven there, so you have that whole Market Street corridor. So these are all things we've been discussing over the last couple of months and will be coming forward within the next month or two.
And obviously, the north-south corridor is gonna be a big impetus to development in the Northeast. You know, we gotta finish that corridor and connect to I-90.
But there's gotta be the funds for the public infrastructure side,
Oh, yeah.
or else nothing will ever happen. I mean, without roads and utilities and
We
clean
got
line,
some
yeah.
in the running for some pretty substantial grants, and we have the
Good.
matching funds set aside for if those come through, that, I mean, it's big money that is set aside for, as those matching grants too, so it's,
Good, I know that was a big challenge, was having the matching money, and there was just no assets to show that you could go out for those grants without the matching.
we have
dollars.
matching money now,
Yay.
actual dollars.
Yay, pandemic.
Yay, pandemic.
All right, I'll just review the draft if you can get it out. And Chris, did you have anything else you wanted to ask or, no? Okay, just checking.
No, thank you.
So I was gonna ask about Advantage Spokane. I know that's an external, that like they're marketing that not in Spokane, so we don't really see how hard it's pushed, because it is for people that are outside the area to come here. How hard are they pushing that?
I'd have to
What
get
are
that
the,
details.
yeah, I mean, Mary, do you know? Do they talk about that at the board meetings?
I've been at one board meeting that Al was the person last
Do you
year.
know, I mean, cause when
They
the
used to come
year,
and give reports
in
at
the
the
ye-
city
We
about
did
how
offer
many.
to come and provide a report, so
On
if you guys
Advantage?
would like that, whatever we ask, they said they are willing to come in and make a presentation before the board, if you guys would like. And so if you would, let me know what subject matter, and we can come in and do that.
I mean, did they talk about Advantage? I mean, cause the year, when I was on in 21, I mean, yeah, I mean, Advantage isn't really brought up in any conversations there, but again, I know it's, no, I think it was a couple years before that Advantage got.
They started
got
Advantage
started. I
when
wanna say
Todd Noki was CEO.
Yeah, I wanna say that was a while ago that
Jared,
it
do you
got
know,
started.
because you were kind of on that subcommittee that worked on Advantage.
Recall, I think it started before I even got involved with it.
Well, it was before COVID.
Yeah,
Advantage was a
yeah, it-
pre-COVID
no, it was-
concept.
Yeah, no, it was,
It's been
a year or two.
Todd Milkey was
Yeah.
the CEO for GSI when we started Advantage and stuff, so he was the one that marketed that effort and stuff, so it's
But
been,
it's a legitimate question, like how expensive is it and what has
What's
been
it
the, what are the measurables
We
around?
did cut
looking
our
at-
funding last year, so prior to last year, we were at 17 and change, it was an odd number, I think like 17.3 something.
But
And then we took it down to 13, that
But I
was your
think we also were pretty confident that, I mean, that 17, I think, well, or Did that 17, was that reflective of sort of their startup costs though?
That had been,
Like,
yeah,
it was
the
higher
original-
cost.
25.
Originally it was
Okay,
25.
25, and then
It's
they
been
backed it
coming
down to
down.
17. And, I mean,
They brought in a presentation about a year and a half ago that did show, they were able to show where they pushed it out and, who had opened, who had passed through. Remember like Chicago, for whatever reason, was one of the more popular places to look at Spokane people in Chicago. So they do have some data points that they could bring back and answer those
It'd be really
questions.
interesting, like during the pandemic, how many people were looking at it when people were looking to relocate and, I don't know. I mean, I know that was more, they can work from wherever.
Yeah.
But it might have changed how many people were using it or looking at.
So would you guys like them to come in for a briefing? Focus on Advantage Spokane, anything else of particular interest you'd like them to focus
Well, I think the ED, like what's been the number of, they used to give presentations around at the city, like how many,
What have you done for me lately?
yeah, like what, and let me say, that was tough times during the recession. There wasn't much, unfortunately, to drum up. But yeah, like how many new businesses, what has been the relocation of businesses to the whole county? I just think it's
Yeah.
good to have them come and do that, and then we could ask questions about, plans for the next steps. But I know you'll be coming back and keeping us briefed.
So speaking
Yes,
with Gary, I know he has some travel coming up with some trade shows. It was in California and then another out of state. Do you want to have do you want these contracts on next week, or do you want to hold them until after you hear the briefing, or just move these forward and then get them scheduled in the works?
I'm happy to move them forward, but have them come in and brief.
Well, and as long as we're gonna have GSI coming in, I'm wondering, do we have Land Spec with the Valley come in too and share what he's doing, and maybe some of the other chambers, Deer Park and West Plains. I mean, it'd be nice to find out, one, holistically, are you guys working together? And two, if you are, what are you doing? And so, would that be of any value?
We fund them all to some extent.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I mean,
So what has been the history with the Valley Chamber in terms of the county?
Well, so
contributing?
we haven't contributed much, and then we've upped our contribution 2 years ago
It's
to
up to 12.5 now.
to 1,200.
I think it used to be 5,000, then we
I
upped
think
it to
it
12.5.
was, it was like,
They were all
It
the
was like
same.
2,500
I
or
think
something,
all
is what I
three of
remember.
the smaller chambers were the same. And then 2 years ago, you upped the Valley to 12.5. West Plains and Deer Park are both at 2,000 last year, this year.
so, and partly with the Valley, so we weren't considered one of their sponsors, so now we're considered one of their government sponsors, being at the 12,000 level. I think their manufacturing event we sponsor, their key sponsor. They are now doing all the ribbon cuttings for everybody, because GSI was never doing great at ribbon cuttings and all of that, and so the Valley Chamber is the one who, stepped into that space to be, we need to celebrate every business that opens. We need to celebrate them, and so they're doing a really great job.
Regardless of where they're located, like they're all over.
So important things, because that helps make, businesses feel appreciated and feel welcomed into the community as they start a new business and all of that. And then they do a good job of their after 5 events, being at different businesses, especially in the Valley. But they're not they're acting as a true chamber, they're not acting as our academic development.
Right.
So there's a difference between them, like the West Plains, I haven't been to a West Plains event, chamber event, so.
Since we've got Mark Losh, he's doing incredible. I mean, their membership now is, for their monthly meetings, up to 100 people. Very similar to what Lance is doing in the Valley and stuff, so they're doing some incredible stuff, and Losh is very high energy kind of a deal. In a lot of ways, he's kind of like Lance. He's very high energy kind of, well, Ron's worked with him a lot and stuff.
Great guy.
Yeah, and stuff, so.
Around.
And I think it'd be valuable for us to find out, what the three other chambers are doing, the Deer Park, West Plains, and the Valley.
Should you try to coordinate them all the same day if possible, or just as works for them?
I would do as works for them, because
And us, I would try to, because I don't want them to feel like they're competing against each other, because they're not. They all have different functions and different roles that they're doing. Because again, like I said, the Valley is picked up on the ribbon cutting anywhere, just because they do it well. More so than I think, I don't think Deer Park or the West Plains, probably just in their areas, but certainly, they can come and talk about what they are doing out in their areas.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the growth of the Valley Chamber. It's excellent. So, yeah, I like the idea of bringing them in and hearing what their plans are
So Deer
and
Park
how
and
we
West
can be
Plains also.
supportive. That'd be great.
So back to.
Do you need to go or? No, okay.
Back to Advantage Spokane. So who, is it up to us to log in and update our page?
Yes.
Okay,
We need to do
Uh-oh.
that.
well,
We
our
need to do that,
last, our last 3 articles on the Spokane County News are from September of 21. And our head video up at the top is 2018 Spokane County at a glance. So that's a little outdated. It does look like the population data is correct, but I think that's probably
The news
linked
articles.
to an outside source. is
The
my
news
guess.
articles are on the group that sponsors the page.
Oh, okay, all right, so.
So Jared, sorry, we'll add that to your list, you and Jessica, to see if we can update the Advantage Spokane website.
Yeah, with the news articles or the content in general.
It sounds like the content in general is
it-
several years old.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the demographic data is probably linked to an outside source, because this is all, I'm gonna say, pretty accurate.
Yeah.
When you look at, because I don't think that's something we change, and it looks like this could be linked to Spokane Trends or something, and just eyeballing it.
it's
But
probably linked to what Patrick Jones does.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, but our news articles, the stabilization center being our ribbon cutting is there, and
So you'll be able to take a look at that, you and Jessica.
just update them
Thank
with 3 new good articles.
And probably business-related articles too. We've had an incredible number of new businesses come in since 18, 19, 20.
Okay, very good. Thank you for coordinating all that. Okay, Scott, anything from you?
I'm gonna have one exec session item,
Okay,
nothing miscellaneous.
so we still have the appointment to the airport board is on our miscellaneous. So. And we'll open it up to what you guys wanna do.
Well, it sounded like yesterday we were honing in on kind of the top 2 candidates. So I didn't know if Commissioner Jordan, if you wanted to weigh in, but I was hearing a lot of support for either Brooke or Tom. And, I think I like Brooke's young energy and the construction and the real estate experience that she'd bring to the board. But anyway, I'm open to other thoughts.
Yes, you had Brooke as your top.
Brooke was my top, but I would be happy with either of them. But yeah, Brooke's my number 1.
Chris?
I agree with Josh, and Amber. I think we're talking about a choice where we've got only good options, in my view. I think Tom brings a lot of good skills and lots of board experience, interest in aviation, which is an advantage too for him. But I would lean a little bit toward Brooke as my top choice because of, I think the construction background really fits with what's going on at the airport right now. She's got involvement in GSI, involvement with the Valley Chamber, and so has a regional perspective on business as well. I liked her perspective about looking at it through the eyes of the traveler. So overall, I just think she's a really good option.
Mr. French.
Yeah, so I spent time last night kind of going through their interviews and stuff, and so my takeaway was with Brooke, you're absolutely right, and I'll just preface my comments with, I think we got two outstanding candidates, whether it's Brooke, whether it's Tom. I think we've got two outstanding candidates. So I look at Brooke, and clearly her background and experience with the construction trades, especially as it relates to building construction, and that being, what the airport's going to be involved with for the next several years, clearly she's going to be an asset. And so I see that as a positive for both the airport and for the community. The asset that Tom brings is that business incubation, the ability to sell the vacant land, fill buildings, and turn that underutilized asset into revenue that'll help pay for the construction. So it's one will help generate more revenue for the airport. The other one will help manage construction of the airport. So both of those are valuable skill sets. I lean toward Tom being my top candidate. But if the board moves to Brooke, I would not be disappointed. She also brings some significant skill sets to the table. So that's kind of where I'm at. Top is Tom, and number two is Brooke, but it's like with a fraction of a difference between the two of them.
And Amber,
I think that, I think where I came down with Brooke being my top was that I agree with everything. Tom is an incredible asset in our community. He's done so many things.
Yeah.
I'm hoping he can still, I think the incubation of the businesses can still happen through the work of S3R3, through the work of Ignite. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I hope that maybe there's a future role for him in that, with specific to the airport. So that's kind of where I came down on it. I thought, well, those things could probably be done alongside or outside the board as well. So.
Well, and so one of the things, so we have right now on S3R3 a vacancy. And so if we were not to do Tom for the airport, I would go back to S3R3. We're going to meet this Thursday and suggest to them that maybe we bring Tom onto S3R3. And that business expansion and that expertise that he has in that area might be a good fit for S3R3 as an alternative, so that we get the best of both worlds out of the two candidates. So that might be another path forward. I have not had this conversation with any of the board members at S3R3, and I assume that Scott is paying attention here, but that might be a reach.
Conversation with one.
But that might be that might be a happy medium where we get the best of both of their skill sets. Offer that up for consideration.
yeah, we don't have.
No, I know.
We don't
I
deal
know.
with S3R3
I know.
as the board here, so that is for you and your fellow board member for S3R3 to discuss. So it sounds like there's three people already that have Brooke as their number one, so Brooke will be moving forward.
What are your thoughts?
No, I'll give them.
I was gonna say, Mary's trying to sneak out. No, I'm joking. I'm messing with you.
I am not trying to get out of the conversation.
I'm messing with
I'm just saying that there's 3 people that have already made the statement that Brooke would be their number 1. I agree that, I mean, they're both really great candidates. I think, I think all the candidates, all 5, were really great, passionate candidates for the board. So, with Brooke and Tom coming to the top, I mean, I probably would say Brooke. I think in some ways I can see as, again, with construction and as things are moving out of the airport in an upward direction, that her skill set for buildings is gonna be, I think beneficial to the airport board at this point in time. And I think, similar to what Amber said, I think with Tom, hoping that all those things he's already doing as, leading Ignite, and yes, if he, got onto the S3R3 board, that would be a win for everybody. So I with Mr. French, that they're neck and neck, and we had a lot of people, I think get us letters of support for Tom, not knowing Brooke was really in the play. She kind of came in here at the latter part, so I think it's a win. I think it's going to be, Brooke's energy is going to be good on the board too. I think she's going to be a young perspective, so I'm excited.
Could I, Madam Chair, I was just gonna thank, I wanted to thank Commissioner Jordan and Commissioner French for kind of working together to encourage us to get more applicants. And in the end, I think, we had some really strong, and folks that we didn't even know were interested in applying, who, the interviews, some of them yesterday were, even if we didn't end up choosing someone for this position, there's some excellent people out there in our community who are strong leaders that we should consider for other boards. So anyway, I want to thank Commissioner Jordan and Commissioner French for kind of, reopening it and working through a process.
Yeah, and I think it's just, the people that all applied, I mean, I just have to thank all 5 of them for being willing to put themselves out there during, a little more scrutiny from the public. So I just think that, as citizen volunteers, again, I just want to encourage people in the future to apply for positions and move forward that way, so.
Yeah, and I don't want my comments with regard to Tom be reflected as a negative comment against Brooke. Both of them are outstanding candidates, and I'm happy to support Brooke without any reservation. She clearly, and the thing that she said yesterday that stuck with me last night is that I'm the leadership of the future, and boy, I think she's dead on right. And she's a sharp, aggressive, intelligent individual that I think is going to be a terrific leader in this community, and I'm happy to support that. And thank you for the comments about Chris and I. The only thing I would say.
Are you guys gonna have breakfast again?
Well, not for 2 hours. I'm pretty comfortable with that because I don't want to put my life at risk with his wife.
Get to the point next time.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Commissioner Waldrop's remarks. I think that was great, and it showed, everybody worked together, and it came to a good conclusion here. So, well done, everybody. Thank yous all around, I think.
And thank you, Gina, for organizing all the interviews and making that happen.
So then we'll take that as a bye leave today? Is that what we want to do, or put it on the consent for next week? Is there a meeting between now and then?
Well, yeah, next week we have actually we meet this week for the committees, and then the board meets next week.
Okay.
Yeah, so
we add it today.
we should do it today and get it taken care of.
So we'll do a bye leave for today, and then I'll just have to do public comment on. Okay, very good. So you have an executive session? Okay, so what would you like?
We've got executive session for pending and potential litigation, about 20 minutes. In addition to the commissioners and the executive management team, Casey Evans from our civil attorneys department will join, as well as Kevin Norris, Sean Dmitrovich, and Justin Roach from our IT team will be joining us. No action intended.
I'm sorry, did you wanna discuss this joint statement before we go into executive session, or the process for giving feedback on it? I'm sorry,
No.
I lost track.
So I think we all got copies. Chris, did you get a copy?
I think it was over email, right?
Okay. Okay, so.
This was that joint statement, Chris, on the collaboration around homelessness structure.
Is that attached to Gina's email?
No, I sent it at about 9:05.
Okay, I'll double check. I'm sure I have it.
So we all just saw it this morning for the first time as we sat down, so we haven't literally had time to read through it. But I guess we need to take a look at it quick to see if we're okay signing on to this joint statement. So if everyone wants to just take a few minutes.
So do we know though, I mean, are these just placeholders for the signatories right now?
Correct. John Holman connected this morning. They will be taking this up tonight.
Okay.
During their meeting, so they received it, it sounds like similar timing to you.
Okay.
In their meeting
Everybody
schedule.
got it at about 10 o'clock last night from Gavin.
So based on that, I would assume nobody has taken action yet.
I mean, it seems like a lot of the first is kind of some flowery language around, but the meat and potatoes is the next 90 days. I like the way it's been. The only little thing I would say is just there will be many avenues for the members of the public. I don't like to say the public, but the members of the public or residents. I just think it's important. I've heard from many residents, over the last 6 months about, wanting to have a voice in how, and I like the way it talks about making sure there's ways for community members, maybe community members or something might be a better way to say it. That was just my only little thing on the backside there.
I think I still feel like that it's misleading in that after the due diligence period, it sounds like we will be doing this authority, and that is not what has been intended. But because of the due diligence period that we're, then we will evaluate.
Yeah, maybe that first sentence after the 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Maybe that needs to be reworded to say more what you were just, I don't know if I had the right words, but this will give us the answer if, as to.
Give us the opportunity to look at what, how to word it, but it's like I keep saying this in the meetings every time, it's like, this is only to provide us the input to then make decisions.
Like whether or not, it's almost like the due diligence period is set up to be able to
guide us as to what the future will be.
Right.
Following the due diligence, a decision will be made on whether this can be successful, on whether we,
Right. But then the rest of the paragraph flows pretty well. Gathering comprehensive input will be key to our success. I mean, the rest of that flows, but there needs to be, I agree, a couple sentences there that really state.
Because it's the due diligence that's gonna inform us as to whether we think this will work or not.
Yes, it's like there's another sentence that needs to be inserted there that states that.
There is one typo on the front. the second paragraph under about the collaborative authority,
Yeah,
the
the
final sentence.
I got it.
Spokane region is ready to.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So, couple comments. That's all right. And we're on the front page, on the front page, the third paragraph starts out as elected leaders. In the second line, it says, give us the best chance to build and deliver strategic. We don't know that it's the best chance yet because we haven't done the study. And so that seems to be a little aggressive and predetermining an outcome that we haven't explored yet. And in the third paragraph, under about the collaborative authority, this collaborative authority, it already predetermines that there's an authority. I'm wondering if this collaborative effort will address these needs. It's the third paragraph, third line. It starts, a collaborative authority will address these needs.
Under about the collaborative authority.
Yeah, under about,
Third paragraph.
yeah, I'm sorry, where it's did you find it?
So sixth paragraph down on the front page.
Yeah, sixth paragraph down. It's just, it's.
Yeah, I
it's
see what
the-
you're saying.
It's
too-
the effort, it's going to identify what we're going to do, whether it's gonna be an authority, a PDA, we don't know yet. But when we start identifying that we're gonna, the whole effort is to create an authority, we predetermine the outcome before we've studied it. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, we talk about establish a regional collaborative authority up even in the.
In the preamble, yeah. So I'm thinking that.
Could address these needs.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking that, let's don't prejudge the outcome of the study before the study happens. And so as you go to the next 90 days, the first sentence, it says, the first step towards developing a solution is a 90-day due diligence period. Because what we're trying to find is a solution, we're not trying to find the authority. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or am I overthinking this?
I
No,
think it makes sense.
I think it makes sense. I mean, I think that's my issue just in my first blush at this, like I said, is that it's making it sound like we've already committed
Yeah.
to whatever they decide at the end, and we have not committed to anything until we have a chance to see what they think.
Those are my observations, in addition to what you guys are already.
Can I catch up on a few things with you, commissioners?
Uh-huh.
So Commissioner French, on that third paragraph, instead of the word will, would just replacing it with the word may suffice for you on that? So it'd read, we believe eliminating political and jurisdictional boundaries may give us the best chance?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Or you could probably just take out that whole third paragraph. Together, we can better coordinate resources invested in public housing to, I don't know. I don't even know if you need that last paragraph. Or working together or something. May give us the opportunity.
Reworked.
It's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a lot in there, yeah.
This third paragraph, you could even just get rid of it or just put a sentence about,
I mean, Mary hit the nail on the head. This makes it look like this is done. It almost implies that this 90-day due diligence is just kind of for show.
Yeah, it's
That-
checking the box.
that this is done, this authority is going to happen.
And that they're gonna be looking at these things during this 90 days, but whatever they come up with, we have to agree to, and it's like, that's not what we've agreed to.
Yeah.
Because we've agreed to nothing. And I think every time I talk to Gavin, I'm like, Gavin, this is just due diligence, remember? And he's like, oh yeah, no, Coopers, remember due diligence, it's just us looking at it, and then you've gotta make a decision at the end, like, yeah. It's not sounding that way. So I don't know if we need to take, I don't know who's putting this together, but I think that's.
Jared can certainly collect, excuse me, all of your comments, reviewed some of the stuff to have another draft this afternoon for you. That kind of takes out the presumption that it's definitely going to be a regional authority. You can have that first sentence, preamble say Spokane Regional elected leaderships announces 90-day due diligence period to evaluate options to effectively manage homelessness and impacts on our community. So it removes the establishing, the foregone conclusion, if you will, and then kind of carry that theme throughout the document.
I would encourage whatever changes we make, if the Valley is discussing this tonight, to get that draft to them today, so they're not looking at, because they may look at this and just say, we're out. They may not break it down and reword stuff like we are, so they may just walk away.
And I like Al's way of saying a regional solution, not authority, taking authority out of it.
Yeah, I think words like effort, initiative, solution, that's what we're all aiming towards, but we don't necessarily know what that looks like yet. And I mean, regional authority is definitely something to consider.
Right, to consider, but it's not what we're, I mean, that's
Yeah,
one of
even
the
that title,
options.
about the collaborative authority, it should be about our joint effort or about our collaboration or our initiative or something.
If you can work on that. Who sent this? Was it Gavin that
Gavin
sent it?
sent it last night.
Okay, so you may wanna just touch base with him over the lunch hour. See.
Hey, Jared. This is a minor point too, but I don't love the language of eliminating political and jurisdictional boundaries. I like working beyond or something like that, because you're not going to actually eliminate boundaries, but something like that, collaborating across boundaries. But there is, just for the record, there's a lot that I think is good in this statement. It's definitely a starting point. I like that it explicitly talks about gathering wide community input, including providers and people with lived experience. But I agree, it's a bit presumptuous on the outcome. So I echo the comments that have been made, and hopefully we can get some constructive changes made.
Yeah, so commissioners, just so that I'm clear on my action items moving forward, I'll touch base with Gavin to let him know the general concerns, but I will go ahead and take a shot at editing before the 2 o'clock meeting, and maybe after the 2 o'clock meeting in miscellaneous, we can go through this again with my changes.
Correct, I would see if you can get Gavin your changes though. Because they're asking everybody to sign on to the same letter. So.
God, they're gonna get so many changes.
Yeah.
So you want me to send Gavin the changes that I'll be presenting to you? Is that what you're saying? I'm a little confused.
Well,
right now.
yeah, here, just a second, we'll come back. Commissioner French.
Well, I was listening to the concerns about the preamble statement, and I was going to offer up some edits, but finish your thought, and I can finish up mine.
Well, I think it's the timing of this. I don't know why the 10th has to be their day. I mean, we may not be able to, I don't think that we're gonna have a finished product for them by the 10th.
No, especially if the county or the city of the Valley needs to review.
Yeah.
I don't know what the city of Spokane, if they've made edits, like, I don't know.
Right.
So,
And the city council probably hasn't had it.
no, not if we got it at 9 o'clock last night.
Or if they approved it, we're not approving it with, there's edits and changes that are happening, so.
I don't think we should stress about a time, I think we should take the time we need in the next week to make it what everyone can agree to, yeah.
That's what I think too. I just like trying to do it for their arbitrary timeline, that's. Yeah. And.
If they need to shrink it to an 83-day due diligence.
That's what it is. Doesn't have the same ring to it.
So, okay, so we will have you take a stab at making the changes we think and getting it to Gavin and saying, we're not gonna be able to approve until next week.
But you do want me to send the changes that I make to Gavin before?
Yes, I think so, because I think it'd be
Okay,
good
be
for him
open.
to know for the
Yeah.
valley tonight, if he's
Circulating.
meeting with the valley, it's like, let's just start circulating the changes.
Just be up front with our concerns. Here's our, I mean, we don't have anything. Everybody's here, anybody watching on TV knows what our concern, I mean, let's
let
just
him
be
know-
open with it about
I'll
it.
let him know that not only do you have another chance to look at it this afternoon, but these were your initial concerns in addition to the timeline issue.
I'd probably say we're not gonna look at it this afternoon, because they've gotta get the valley too, if they're gonna
Right.
present this to the valley, they're just gonna wanna, I mean,
But Commissioner Kearns, you have a good thought that maybe making some initial edits, redlined to,
before tonight for the valley,
right,
yes,
so
so
the
they
valley
know and they're
council
aware.
members
Yep.
can see, oh, okay, all right.
This isn't the county's final draft, but here are some of the concerns the county had.
Right.
That may reflect the same concerns the valley has, so. And the valley may like the way we're headed, and so.
So I wonder if there's any value in doing like a strikeout version where we show the things that we eliminated. Because I think that will also be informative to at least the direction we're heading in and some of the things that we've got concerns about.
So track changes,
Yep, I've already started.
and and you're welcome to, we can bring it back up and under miscellaneous, I think we're just not gonna be approving it today, because we can't approve it today.
Understood.
Can I offer a couple of suggestions?
Yes.
And feel free to edit the heck out of this. So on that preamble, I agree with you that, you know, that it's too strong a statement. So Spokane Regional Elected Leadership announced a 90-day due diligence period to evaluate a collaborative effort to effectively address homelessness and its impacts on our community. We don't want to manage homelessness, we want to eliminate it if we can, but we clearly want to address all the impacts of it. Just an observation. And then if we're going to save paragraph 3, I'm okay with eliminating it. We believe eliminating political jurisdictional boundaries may give us a chance to build and deliver strategic and impactful solutions.
Well, I think instead of eliminating, I think Commissioner Jordan had the point of working beyond political and jurisdictional boundaries.
Yeah, good point.
We believe in collaborating among political and jurisdictional boundaries.
I think working beyond works. We believe in working beyond political and jurisdictional boundaries.
Or cross. Either works, but.
Infinity
Well, I was thinking transcend.
He also said collaborating across.
Transcend.
We
I like
can-
that. It feels,
Try a couple.
it feels fancier.
Exactly.
I don't know why,
Yeah,
it just feels fancy.
I'm going Disney.
It's one of those $5 words.
Yeah.
And I think every time we see collaborative authority, it'd be collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Or that's in there a few different times.
I get why they put authority, because they want a public development authority, but it might not be that. I think it even said that in here, didn't it?
Yeah.
It even said
Pro con
PDA, nonprofit, so like even they said, it could be something else.
Right.
So, but I get why they put authority, because I suspect that's what they want.
Right, so then it, even in that second folded, about the collaborative authority, it'd be about the collaborative effort. About the word, and people can change that word, but it's like, this is an effort to look at what we need to do for the future. Commissioner French, you're welcome to continue to make edits. No, I mean, it's all good. I just feel like we've got to accuse people to have it noon or something. I know you said you didn't, but
Yeah, I can't see.
let's go ahead and we will continue editing this. Anyone is welcome to get Jared further edits, and Jared will hand it out. And we can do just one more kind of quick run through at 2 o'clock.
Can I bring up just on the second page, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 bullet points? those are all specifically about a public development authority.
Yes, I think those are fine, because
Okay.
that's what that's part of what they're researching, if that's a viable
Okay.
option.
So I'll keep everything other than that, though, I'll change authority to effort. Or that type of language, so, understood, thank you.
Yeah, I think just saying for a regional authority or
I would say A
yeah.
versus
the,
Yeah.
yeah. But that is something that we wanna.
Okay, so Scott, I apologize that now it is 11:45. Would you like to state the purpose and redo? We'll do a redo on the executive session.
We're going to go into exec session, commissioners, for the purpose of discussing pending and potential litigation for 20 minutes. Joining the exec session will be the commissioners, executive management team, Casey Evans from our civil attorney office, Kevin Norris, Sean Dimitrovich, and Justin Roach from our IT team. No action is going to be occurring after that.
Scott, I also wanted to add to that, we'd be entering executive session pursuant to RCW 4230.1101A II, information pertaining to information technology or assets.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so it is 11:46, and we'll be going into executive session for 20 minutes. We do not anticipate any decisions, so at the end of that, we will adjourn for the morning, and we will see everyone back for our 2 o'clock consent agenda. Thank you, and then Chris, do you know how to get into the executive session?
I think so.
A link, okay.
Okay. Is it in the Outlook invite? Okay, I'll hop over. Thank you.
Okay,